Dora. And also, that's a new slide you have just made for us on love, and it's you make such beautiful slides, and you can just make them like that in a minute. And I know it takes a lot of hard work to do that. You can't just suddenly come up with that. So thank you so much for that. I'll just speak a moment about the libraries that are available to you for anybody, and you can get all the services that if you want to check out them, are all online, and we are, as a matter of fact, recording this one now, and this one too will be available to you. So, okay, all right, let's move along, and it is now time for us to welcome Cee as our speaker today. On top of everything else she does for us, she is today going to speak for us as well. So I'll just turn it over to you, Cee.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm just going to fix the view here. There we go. So just so you know, if anybody wants to just see the speaker more, you can just go to the right-hand corner of your screen and choose the view button and press the speaker button. And then you'll have the chance to see me other than this little tiny box. So I just want to ask you, have you ever had the experience of getting to the door of an attic or a basement where there is absolutely no light? You can't see the next step. So you reach for the wall and you're going, where is that light switch? And you flick it, and it doesn't work. I've had that experience too many times. I can remember in my grandmother's house, she had an attic and a basement. And often neither worked, the lights. And she would say, well, just go to the top of the stairs. And at the top of the stairs, there's a light. Just pull on the rope. And I said, but I can't see the rope. How am I going to know what? I'm just going to fall my way up the stairs and not be able to reach that rope. But she was determined to get me to do that anyways, even though I couldn't see the first step. Well, there was no sense in going into the basement to get the flashlight because that was equally intimidating and scary. So I would eventually get up that staircase. But I just wonder sometimes, we all face these staircases. And how often are we in trepidation to take that next step, to be fearless in that moment? What do you do when you get to the edge of a staircase that is all dark? So MLK, Martin Luther King, it's Martin Luther King Day tomorrow. And he actually, I think he would have been 96 on the 15th, which is the same day Dora passed. And he had a way of sharing with people what to do when faced with that uncomfortable staircase, which I will get to. But I want to first address the fact that as humans, we choose what we think at the edge of that staircase. We choose our behaviors as well. Our thoughts create our reality. We're often scared when we get to something dramatic or big that we have to handle, like a staircase. You can see your life like a staircase. And many times, even as children, we would seek the staircases because we wanted to experience something dramatic. We wanted to have this unbelievable emotion. We would heighten our reality as often as we could, whether it was flying through the airs on our bicycles or jumping off of, cars or different things. I mean, I can't even tell you the stuff that I did as a kid to have those emotions, the games that we play. Even we would do the hauntings, we would say, okay, go down the stairs, literally in the dark. And at the bottom of the stairs, someone would come out and scare them, right? We would play those games or go into the garage. It's all dark with your friends and then pretend that there's something buried under there in the far corner, and everybody runs out screaming. The things that we do to ourselves, the thoughts that we start as a child and the emotions that we embed inside of us are dramatic. We are carrying so much in our subconscious that at times it's unbelievable. And yet we carry patterns like that into our adulthood as well. We still have a tendency to want to experience big emotions. That's why people still watch horror movies. That's why people even go to big concerts. They want those emotions, watch tearjerkers, and those murder mysteries. I mean, there's CSI Miami, CSI whatever in Florida, CSI New York. There's Criminal Minds. I mean, you can't get enough of what's out there. It's shocking how much we do. And, as a medical intuitive energy therapist, I have to say that when we watch that stuff, we take just a little bit of time off our life because we're not inviting the flow of our divinity, which would be so much more wonderful and loving for us if we did. Sometimes when we get to those staircases, those moments where everything's in the dark, we don't know what to do, we want to be able to count on what we have preserved within. Usually, if we've been watching things all week or having a week where we're just not comfortable, we've been saying things to ourselves, and then something big comes and we go, what do I count on? Because everything we've stored up for the week, for the month, for the year, and all those years of subconscious teachings are not in the light. They're not in flow with our divinity. And so we don't know what to do at the edge of the staircase. It's really dark then. At those times, faced with a staircase, what would you do? The unseen, the unknown, especially when something really big has to happen and you've got to participate. Like right now, in my own life, my concerns of what do I do next now that Dora has passed? What is my role? That staircase, I've never experienced this as a spiritual leader. In my life, as Cheryl, I've had multiple losses, but now I'm in a role to do something different. And that staircase is a little daunting. But I have to go to that staircase and I have to say, I have this. I have the power within me to support me, to enlighten me. I have wisdom, I have understanding, and I have will. And I am going to face that staircase. Each of us can do that. Each of us has the personal power and the capacity to take a step forward. But how? So let's look at one of the greatest leaders in North American history to date. And I say North American history because Martin Luther King Jr. not only affected the United States, but he affected the world, and especially us up here in Canada, through his guidance, his philosophies, and his ministry. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And he's quoted as saying, faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. How? With faith. There are very few leaders on this earth ever who've expressed faith as the great guide to attain all that they would achieve in their roles here on the earth. We're used to seeing people like Trump who manipulate, who perpetuate madness, who use power and control, war, fighting, hate in their leadership, but not Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He used faith, and I love and respect him for that path. During a time when African Americans were being murdered every day with no justice available to them and no validation whatsoever, Martin Luther King stood there with countless brothers and sisters to face off segregation and discrimination. You might have heard of the NAACP. It stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And it was started in 1909. And they made a very significant point. We will not use violence to achieve equality. And that was followed through in the civil rights movements of the 50s, 60s, into the 70s in the United States. But where else could communities turn during difficult times? They turned to the churches. Communities like ours were the essential support tool for African Americans during their hardest times. They went there for counseling, for guidance, for community, to help families through losses. And there were a lot at that time. It was awful. To feed the poor, to give shelter, to give sanctuary. And significantly in the civil rights movement, to fight for social justice, or essentially to live in God for social justice. And that's where we find the strength of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. His first ministry was at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. Now that might bring up a memory for you. 1954, he got there. And in 1955, the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott occurred. So Rosa Parks refused to go to the back of the bus. She was one of many people who had been arrested for not going to the back of the bus. But it was time for the NAACP to utilize a good person to be the face of this truth, that they were not given equality, even riding on a bus. So for one whole year, African Americans walked to work unless they could get a ride. They set up stations throughout Montgomery, Alabama, to pick people up and get them to work if they were fortunate enough to have a car or a station wagon. It took over a year before the courts decided that it was illegal to insist and segregate people on the buses. During that year, Martin Luther King was the Montgomery Improvement Association president, and he was only 26 years old. He was quite a remarkable man. Not long after that, in 1960, he left Montgomery, Alabama, and went to Atlanta, Georgia, because he was being called to a different type of action, and he didn't have the time to be a senior minister. So he went to Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta and became the associate pastor to his father, the senior pastor, Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. And before him, his father, and before him, his father, all pastors. Martin Luther King was a key leader in assuring the rights of African Americans. And we know that when you uplift one community, you uplift all communities. That's what we understand to be true at Unity. And justice, metaphysically, is an awakened state of reasoning. It's just reasoning. It shouldn't be that hard, should it? And justice comes with love at Unity. Otherwise, we're just working from the head. And humans need heart. That's how we thrive. Love as justice grows from the heart. And that's when we really experience the rightness of the world, is when we are expressing love through our heart. MLK had faith. He had faith in the good people he was with and in the good work that they were doing. He understood that faith is not needing to see the next step. Faith is in trusting the indwelling source. Our guidance is from within. And he knew that absolutely. He had faith in God like nobody around him. He just sang that so loud. This was his key. So much so that he knelt down in the middle of a march on the Selma Bridge as thousands got together to walk towards Washington, D.C. He just knelt down and he started listening to God. And that day he heard, "Not today. Stop." And what did he do? He stopped all those people from marching. He said, "No, not today." And they turned back and they all went home or to their motels and hotels because he knew something bad was coming. He was listening to the indwelling source. We can too. Turns out actually that it's not that uncommon to do that. We know that Gandhi did that. We also know that Charles Fillmore, our unity leader, did that. He would call it going up to the office. I'm going up to the office. And he'd listen to his divinity. And he'd take notes. And he wrote a lot based on those times with God. Even Lowell Fillmore, his son, he listened to God. And he listened to God so much that he took unity from Kansas City and made it an international gift for all of us. Unity exists here because of Lowell Fillmore. And he was very wise and heartfelt. And when he was listening to his indwelling source, he heard this: when you make yourself a willing channel through which God's love can flow freely, you are helping God to make its attracting power manifest in your life as divine order and justice. So when you allow God through you, you will be guided to divine order and justice. Allow it through and listen. He further said, divine justice cannot be attained by compulsion. God's loving justice is available to all persons who have faith enough to practice loving justice in all that they think and do. He had faith. He existed before MLK. And just like Lowell, MLK chose love over fear, and he chose nonviolent means to change entire systems. This was what was needed to get the nation where they needed to go, because you can't bring peace through violence. He knew it would be a long path, but that every step mattered. When you have faith, you're willing to take it slow. When you have faith, you're willing to take one step at a time, to know it's safe, to know it's strong, to know that you're not going to crash and burn and go through it, and not to jump over a series of steps. Because if you try that, you're going to fall, and you're going to take a lot of people with you. So faith is working with that indwelling source and taking those one step moments at a time. He chose love over brutality and love over hatred. So not only was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, he got his doctorate at Boston University. Not only was a good man, but he was a great leader. And he was a minister. He was not your typical minister. He was a strong preacher and an orator. And people were drawn to him for that. Although he wasn't a politician, and he would never be a politician, he inspired many to be politicians. And that's one of his legacies as well. here in Canada at the time, and even now, MLK is our cousin and our brother and our teacher. We are blessed. Barack Obama, former president of the United States, said, "He stirred our souls and reminded us of the better angels of our nature." Martin Luther King was one of the better angels of our nature. You might have heard of his speech, "I've gone to the mountaintop," or "I've been to the mountaintop." That's one of his most famous speeches, April 3rd, 1968. And that's where we hear, for the first time, faith is taking the first step when you don't see the staircase. This statement encapsulates perseverance, the essence of faith, in the face of uncertainty. And MLK was uncertain. He had a feeling something was going to happen in his life. There were always threats, and he knew something was coming. And the very next day in Memphis, Tennessee, on April 4th, 1968, we lost a great leader. MLK had courage and a commitment to a cause. Even when the journey was difficult and the destination, especially for him, he had faith, and he taught us to have faith in spite of uncertainty. But a lot of us have asked these questions. With all that faith for all Black Americans, why did he need to be shot? Why did we lose such a great leader? Some people have said, well, he was martyred so that our movement could stand upon him to rise themselves up. But I don't buy that. I'm not a martyring acceptor. I believe that we don't need martyrs. We need to have faith, like he said. And my sense of Dr. Martin Luther King was that he had such a devotion for the cause that when he said his prayers, he probably never prayed for himself. He probably prayed for everybody else and forgot himself. And perhaps that was part of his loss. We need to care for ourselves no matter what we do, no matter what we are give. We are not called by the loving source to be selfless. You can be essentially and profoundly giving without being selfless. To be selfless is to release the self. The self we know is our body with the ego. We need to be purposeful and live in our humanness. We need to be able to connect to our indwelling source before we take each step, and to have faith that we are safe and secure in taking those steps in alignment with our brothers and our sisters, but not selflessly. From Isaiah 41:10, we hear, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your indwelling God. I will strengthen you and help you, and I will uphold you." I believe now more than ever, with the highs and lows of the political systems in the United States and Canada, that we still need to be living in faith, to live fearlessly. We will get through this time, and we will do it with love and a sense of peace, knowing justice comes from being still with the loving source. We don't need to sit in fear of what's ahead. We can trust that we're going to get through this together and in alignment with the indwelling source, God. You might want to sit and just do a prayer and just welcome at your heart a conversation with the indwelling God. Something like this. It might be, Loving source, I feel you. I know and trust your presence in each moment. And I am able to affirm that life is good and is only getting better each and every moment. I am safe and I am well. I feel secure knowing your presence is always with me and guiding me. And I am succeeding as your partner in creating a better world. The other day, as I was reading this out loud, I got to the prayer part that I'm going to share with you next. And I was about 3 sentences into the prayer, and the light went above my head and just turned out. And I said, "Is that you, Martin Luther King?" I have faith that he heard me and that he will hear us today. So I would like to take this moment to thank him for all of the blessings he left all of us in North America and the world. We thank you, Martin Luther, for making it clear to us, even now, that there is a goodness and a capacity within each of us that has the answers we need. You have inspired us to trust in our journey and embrace the unknown, fostering courage and resilience in the face of uncertainty. We are grateful for you, and we are thankful for all that you have provided us here in Canada, in our unity, as much as you have been the soul and energy behind a great movement of successful women and men in achieving equality for people from all walks of life in the United States and virtually around the world in your philosophies. We know that every journey begins with that single courageous step, and we know that there is more work to be accomplished everywhere, and we will stand by as our call to action in awareness to be more fearless in taking those steps onto the staircase that at first looked disheartening or frightening, yet trusting as you did that faith through our indwelling source, God, is the way to our success. And so it is. Thank you. Please now join me in a gentle meditation, and may my words become your words. Letting go with a great exhale, then bringing in gently and slowly your next breath. I am now ready to receive the next stores of illumination through the oxygen I am taking into my magnificent lungs. Breathing in. I feel in my lungs that there is white light. I feel that my lungs are all clear in this light and being used in this great capacity to allow our nervous system to calm us so we can sink deeper and more lovingly into the source of our indwelling source. As I breathe calmly and gently, I'm in awe of the light within me. My indwelling source is pure love, pure intelligence, pure health, and wholly magnificent. I feel the essence of my divinity, my great connection to the one loving source, and my body's strength and determination is ever more positive. I recognize that I may not see the whole staircase in any situation, but I have absolute faith in the help of God, and I will take the first step in each moment with this awareness. It is my call to action to be reminded of my faith and its profound power when facing any staircase. Breathing in gently and slowly, I'm encouraged to embrace uncertainty, trust in the process, and recognize that all is well in faith. Whether I am pursuing a dream, climbing a mountain, tackling a challenge, or making a difference, the act of stepping forward will lead me to profound growth and transformation. I take a moment now to imagine that I am before a staircase, and I'm not sure what to do next. What will be my first step? I know that when action is necessary, I can sit somewhere quietly or stand quietly and have a communion with my indwelling source. And each time I am concerned about the next step, I will listen to how this source is guiding me in what to release and what to affirm. I know through unity that I can always be ready for action. As I live this each day in my fifth principle, I also trust that what I think does become my greatest outcome. Anytime I need support or understanding, I know I can reach to my indwelling source. I have faith. I will be guided. It is always here within me, and I trust that I will always receive what I need for my highest good, and that all will be well. I'm leaning now into my faith of the loving source, God, and I trust that my next step will be absolutely fabulous. Thank you. And so it is.
Thank you, Cee. And I really mean that very, very seriously. That was a beautiful talk, and I would actually like to see it all bundled up and sent all over the world because it is so meaningful. And it's such a reminder of what a wonderful man the Martin Luther King was and how powerful that message is of love over uh, war or hatred you know. So anyway, thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. Um, I guess where are we now? What's next?